Hi everyone and welcome to the LTL Show. I'm your host Jack Moore, so I'm one of the directors of WeShape, which is a technology consultancy based in London. Just a reminder of what the LTL Show is. So we're going to be speaking to the most interesting names in technology, leadership and business, and we're going to be speaking about their experience, their stories, their backgrounds, and hopefully some interesting and funny stories along the way. So today we're fortunate enough to be joined by Dominic Munkhouse. So Dom set up Rackspace in the early days in Europe in 2001, took them to 150 people and 26 million. He was the MD of Pier 1 Hosting, took them to 30 million in 5 years. Here in the UK, I think globally it was $90 million to $200 million. He coaches leadership teams in multiple businesses and is also the author of a recent book, F Plan B. Dom, how are you doing?
I'm very well indeed. Very well indeed.
Great
Lovely
stuff.
to talk to you this morning, Jack.
Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. Do you want to give our audience a quick, I suppose, overview of who you are and what you do, Dom?
Well, I think your intro's been quite detailed there. Yeah, I work with CEOs and the leadership teams of technology firms at the moment. Typically, those that are looking to, growing at 20% a year over year or more, or have a desire to double their businesses in 3 years. Some of those businesses are PE backed. Some of those are privately owned and are looking to do an exit.
Nice. Great stuff. Thanks for joining us. So Dom, what I like to do here on the LTL Show, I suppose, to give our audience a bit of a intro to you, kind of understand who you are a bit better. It's a bit raw, a bit of fun, but we do a quick fire round. So I'm going to ask. So what I'll ask you is to just think of the first thing that kind of comes to your head. It's going to be quite fast paced. There's some funny questions in there. There's some serious questions in there. So yeah, let me know when you're ready to go.
Yeah, ready.
Cool. So what do you see as the CEO's top priority?
People.
Favorite takeaway? Oh, sorry. For the quick fire round, I'll just say just kind of quick answers, as quick as you can. So people.
Yeah.
Favorite takeaway?
Indian.
Nice. One truth you believe in that most people disagree with you on?
That motivation is internal.
Nice. When in the office, do you wear a suit or smart casual?
Shorts, almost 12 months of the year.
Really? That's the best way to be. I mean, what's your favorite company brand, Dom?
Oh, the one that comes to mind first is Riverford, the organic veg guys, mainly because nice. they sent me a free cookbook and I was reading that yesterday.
Nice. Office based or remote?
Well, my office is on the farm, so it's physically not at home, but it's only 50 feet from home.
Yeah. Oh, that's quite useful. If you could work on solving any problem in the world, what would that one problem be, Dominic?
Look, the purpose of the business that I have is to take the mystery out of growth, and that's what I spend my time doing.
Nice. At which company were you most successful, and why? Obviously, you can take a bit more time on this, Dom, now.
It depends on success. I suppose Pier 1, where I suppose that I'd learned more stuff along the way, and we put it into action in a systematic way, and then had a great exit.
Yeah, I remember Pier 1 back in the day when they first kind of you guys were was it based down by the coast somewhere?
Yeah, we were in Southampton. So when we opened that office, people in London said, "Are you sure you'll be able to get enough talent?" And it's a long way away from London. It's an hour and a half from London, and they've got TV and the wheel and electricity and everything in Southampton. So getting talented people was fine.
Oh, there you go. Last couple of questions. Early bird or night owl?
Early bird.
Nice. Tell me something interesting about yourself, Dominic. This is the last of the quick fire round questions, so you can take your time and kind of open up on that one.
Well, one of the things I nicked from, I'm a magpie, and so I tend to visit businesses and spot something that I think would absolutely fit in a different context. And I stole something from What If, who are an innovation business now owned by Accenture. And
Right.
one of the things that they had is on the walls, their staff had the top 10 things you don't know about me. And so stole that. And the one thing that most people don't know about me is that I'm 1/8 Nepalese.
Really? Well, there you go.
My
People
great grandmother was Nepalese.
Oh, nice. Cool. Interesting stuff. So thanks for that, Dominic. I mean, that's the quick fire round. So you can kind of, I suppose, sit back in your chair a bit now and go down. So, so the next few questions obviously are going to be a bit more detailed. So take your time and open up, because I know a lot of our audience are really excited to hear from you. So yeah, I mean, let's kind of go back to the early days of Rackspace specifically. So building it here in the UK and Europe. I mean, are there any, I suppose, key points or learning curves, that you wish you knew back then that you know now, that would allow that kind of growth to be even more fantastic?
I think that if I think back to, when we got to about 150 people in the UK, what had we done well and what hadn't we done well? And some of the things we had done very well. We were traveling so fast. I don't think we had really nailed down how to train people. We probably could have got better at recruitment. You know, we still had a, we were just outside the M25 in Uxbridge, or just on the M25 at Uxbridge. And, a third of our staff came out from central London and 2/3 traveled in. So, if you had your time again, you probably wouldn't put it there. It's the worst of both worlds. It's in the middle of nowhere, having to pay London salaries.
I've been there a few times myself. It's a beautiful office as well. It's probably more beautiful inside than out.
Yes. So I think fixing the location earlier would have been a good thing to have done in hindsight. Yeah. And then the other thing would have been, I still had 26% annual staff turnover in the last year I was there, and so that was too high. So we hadn't really nailed we hadn't got fantastic at recruitment. We weren't getting it right 80% of the time, which is my aim now when I'm working with clients, is how do we make sure we only hire A players or A player potential 80% of the time. And so I think if we'd put it somewhere else, then those two things combined would have meant we'd have got better people, more better people quicker. And to your first question on the rapid fire round, what is the CEO's number one job? And I think it's people, getting the right people on the bus.
Yeah. No, it's interesting you say that, because I mean, from my personal experience, I remember with Rackspace, they used to have a funny sort of stage in the interview process where they would ask you to draw a picture of something that you're passionate about. I remember talking to a lot of people, and they would be like, that really threw me off, that question. So some people tried to draw like a red fedora hat, a red hat, because obviously it was a big Linux function back then. But yeah, I always thought that was a really interesting way of an interview process in the early stages.
Yeah, it's funny, because I remember at Pier 1 I interviewed somebody from Rackspace, and she said, "Oh, I see you've stolen this draw a picture idea from Rackspace." I said, "Stolen it?
Stolen?
I was the guy who made it up. What are you talking about?" So yeah, what we did is as we were trying to grow out the recruitment. So when I could no longer do all of the recruitment, it was what process did we put in place? So we had something else that we could talk about to try and, when people say hire for attitude, everyone says, "Oh, we hire for attitude and we train skill." And then you say, "Well, how do you do that?" And they go, oh, I don't know. Like, isn't that just what everybody says? I didn't know you actually had to do something. So what we would do is we would say, "Here's a packet of colored pencils. You have 10 minutes, blank sheet of A4 paper. Please draw what it is that motivates you and inspires you." And then in the next 20 minutes when we come back in, what we're going to do is we're just going to ask them questions about that drawing. and we're just going to say, what is this and what is this and what is this, and tell me more about that and tell me more about that. And we found that people would tell us all of the things that they had promised themselves that they weren't going to tell us when they came for interview. And you would get a sense of, is it about them? Is it about the team? And because you're trying to, because I don't believe it's my job as a manager to motivate you. It's my job to hire people who are intrinsically motivated, who will come to work to do a great job. And so I'm using that to try and filter them out. And what it meant was that later on, when I was no longer doing all of the interviews, I could sit there sort of as a review on a Friday and say, okay, show me the CV, show me your interview notes, show me their drawing. What were their Gallup strengths? And I could say, if you want to hire this person, I have no concerns. Or I would say, I'm concerned about this in their drawing. I don't know. I remember here at the company, Monkhouse and Company, where I was interviewing last year, and this young lady turned up and she did a drawing, and it was 3 pictures of her, all in red, and it just because you get a sense of what does a good picture look like. Not the fact the fact is that I think in 20 years of doing this, only one person has ever shown any artistic talent, but that's not the point. In her case, I looked at that picture and went, she's only used red, and it's 3 pictures of her. This is all about her. And so then I was asking her questions about the team and her colleagues, and it was obvious she was just all about her, and so wasn't going to be a fit at all. And so it's that, creating a system that actually I have had people who've turned up and I've said, I'd like you to draw a picture, and they said, I'm not drawing a picture. It's like, okay, fine, bye.
I've heard a few people doing that over at Rackspace as well. And I like when I said earlier, it kind of threw people off. I think like you mentioned, it kind of throws down that guard a bit, like, because you go into an interview saying, right, this is what I'm going to say, this is how I'm going to do it. But it kind of, I suppose, almost opens them up, and you get to, I suppose, sense a bit of their real personality shine through. So
yes, absolutely, because we've taken the CV, we've put the CV to one side, and I just want to talk about you and you. And I think when people are often, in a recruitment, what they're going to do is they might be counter offered. And so particularly if this interview around the picture is being done by the person who's going to be their manager, I think it's very powerful, because now they've had half an hour with this person just talking about themselves, and this person is just asking questions and listening. And you just think, well, when was the last time you sat down with your manager and they were interested in you, not about work, but just interested in you for half an hour? And I think that's quite rare. So I think it helps early on build some rapport and trust with this person that you're potentially going to give up this stuff over here that well and jump ship and take a risk. And I think that not only did it help us as a filter, but it helped us with getting the prospective employees over the line.
No, I mean, you also advise a lot of businesses, right? A lot of technology businesses. I mean, do you see issues like this come up quite often? I mean, what are the most common issues that you tend to see when kind of advising your customers and tech businesses and businesses in general?
Well, we absolutely do a talent assessment. So we use the definition of A player from Top Grading, Brad Smart's Top Grading, which is that you're after the 10% of available talent for a given job in a given location at a given salary. And so one of the things I do with organizations is we get the executive team to rate everybody in the company on that sort of ABC based on performance. And then we say, okay, well, and then there's a values lens. And so would any of these people also not be a values fit? One of the things that throws up is often organizations have what we call toxic A's. So there might be salespeople, or they're network engineers or software developers. And the organization thinks they're going to be hard to replace, or that they're delivering on their job. They're an exceptional performer, but actually they're a dick. And what we're doing is we're putting up with them. And so, that activity shines the spotlight on those people. And now let's make a decision. Let's get rid of them. Let's replace them. Let's give them some feedback and see if they can fix their behaviors. Does happen occasionally, not very often. And if not, let's have a plan to replace them, because this business would be a better business without them.
Yeah.
And then where else have we got people who are not performing or not a values fit? Let's get rid of them. Do some work around our A players and identify what the values look like, and then let's have a plan to recruit more of those A players. So let's get really clear on what the values are that we're looking for in new hires. And so that leads us on to a review of the recruitment process and making that really tight, so that works. So that's the people bit. And then the other thing is, I suppose every client who I've ever sat down with has said that they have a strategy, and then we go through a strategy review process, and we find that the strategy they thought they had isn't maybe the strategy that they need. And that most of them would say they have a business plan, but in reality what they have is an Excel spreadsheet that shows them how the revenue and costs might change over time, but that's not actually an execution plan.
Yeah.
So we put that in place, and we change. I suppose we change one of the fundamental things is we change the cadence of the business from an annual plan, so 3 years of a plan to get to a goal in 3 years' time, to 12 quarters, and we go to a 90 days, 13 weeks of sprint for 90 days. At where we're going to be in 90 days, let's up the cadence, and let's up the transparency, and make sure that the executive team are focusing on a smaller number of things and getting them done.
Yeah.
And so they're sort of three of the things that come up most of the time, and that have a material immediate impact.
Yeah. Okay. So Dominic, let's talk about your book, right? So you've recently released a new book, so F Plan B. Do you want to tell it? I suppose it's best coming from the horse's mouth. I mean, do you want to tell us what it's about, and I suppose what drove you to write it?
I often, people ask me, as you did, what did I learn at Rackspace?
Yeah.
And what I've done differently. So I took the sort of 5 principles and 10 pillars, if you like, that I'd learned at Rackspace and Pier 1. And, the tools we used at Rackspace were Vern Harnish's Rockefeller Habits, Patrick Lencioni's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, the work of Jim Collins, which I guess appears now more succinctly in Vern's second book, Scaling Up. And so it was I'm now coaching those tools, but if I think back to Rackspace and Pier 1, what would be the principles? So I don't talk at all really about strategy and strategy formation, but it's about what are the 5 principles and then 10 things that I learned along the way that people should focus in on.
Okay, cool.
And I guess the why the title.
Yeah.
I think
love the title. By the way.
Yeah. No, the hardest thing is, what would the title for the second book be? That's the question there. But what really it was Rackspace and Pier 1 were both people businesses. They're both IT services businesses.
Yeah.
In both cases, what we're trying to do is, at Rackspace, we were trying to become the Ritz-Carlton of IT services.
Yeah.
And that, fanatical support was a sort of our purpose. And so, plan B was that, that it's doubling down on that. Like, if we are a services business, let's be the best service business in the world. If that is our differentiator, then let's not have a plan B. Let's just execute plan A. And so often that's what I'm trying to do with clients is, what is your difference? Let's not try to be the biggest or fastest. Let's not try and beat a competitor on one of their attributes. Let's find our unique space in the marketplace and double down on that. Hence the title.
No, it's available on Amazon. So I'll put a link as well for you, Dom, on the video below. But yeah, so I mean, moving on. I mean, given the current economic climate, a lot of business leaders are going to, I suppose, be thinking about and having to make very difficult decisions. I mean, as a business coach, Dom, what advice would you be giving to these leaders at the moment?
I think that certainly across the clients that I work with, the impact that the pandemic has had on them has been very different.
Yeah.
You know, at one end, I've had a client. We had one client who really their revenue went to zero on day one.
Oh God. Yeah.
But they've pivoted twice.
Yeah.
And they're now, you know, they've now picked up a large deal, which gets them through to next year, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, I've had some clients whose revenue went to zero and is sort of slowly climbing back up. And in all cases, I think people have taken the opportunity to look hard at their employees. And, you know, one client last year ran an ad for some new sales talent, and got a bit of it. Was you know, the response was a bit iffy. This year they've been they had to turn their ad off after 2 weeks. They ran an ad a couple of months ago, and because they had 130 CVs pile in the first 2 weeks.
Really?
And so you know, again, going back to that talent thing, and looking at your talent, you know, now I think is a fantastic time to bring in some new talent. That my own experience in the team here is, you know, we just hired 2 new people, and, you know, fantastic availability, particularly around interns or apprentices.
Yeah.
You know, that lots of people had those things, graduates had those things teed up, and large firms killed that. And so I've had, you know, we've done it here. We've hired 2 marketing apprentices, and a number of clients have done the same thing. They've gone into the marketplace looking for graduate talent and have been able to pick up phenomenal people that, you know, maybe last year they didn't have graduates coming in. You know, at Rackspace, when I left, that 150 people that you refer to, about 50 of those people were graduates that we'd hired over that sort of the last sort of 3 or 4 years of my time there.
Really?
Most of them had come in into the sales organization, but then they had found themselves often in operations roles as well.
Yeah.
And so I've always been, you know, if you can hire for attitude, then you just have, you know, particularly with a large number of graduates in the business, you just have passion and energy and vitality, and you know, that you can't help, optimism that, you know, just infects the whole organization.
And these people always the people that want to, I suppose, learn new things, right? Want to throw themselves at new projects out of their comfort zones, and I suppose are key when scaling a business, really. Yeah,
and the other thing is also, you know, don't be too precious about them joining for life. You know, there's a fantastic sort of concept that one of my clients uses, tour of duty, which is, you know, look, I'm going to hire you ostensibly, you know, for the next 2 years, let's talk about what this tour of duty looks like. What are you committing? What are we committing? And then at the end of, you know, as you get towards the end of that tour of duty, you know, you're going to stay in the same job. You're going to, you know, actually having an open conversation with people about where this job might take them or where they might be next. And it's a result if somebody comes and does great work for you for 2 years and then goes somewhere else. That's not a failure. If you're particularly in technology, if you're growing fast, then there will be some staff turnover as people go stepping stones from you to somewhere else. You know, if you've got more people than you can fit into your management ranks, even if you're scaling, then some good people will go elsewhere, and let them go with your blessing.
Yeah. I mean, it also, I think that's really, really an interesting point. I think not a lot of people do it enough, but sitting down with someone at the start of that journey with them and saying, look, this is what we want to kind of achieve out of this position. This is what we want you to do in this 2 years. What do you want to kind of get out of it in 2 years? And then after that 2 years, if that is that, well, look, if you want to move on to maybe a bigger company or a startup or something like that, that's fine. Like, I think it's a very grown up way of I suppose, almost like managing and recruiting for your team. And I don't think a lot of people do that enough. And like you say, I think people do feel very personal, take it personally when people do want to move on.
Well, I think it's because they haven't. It's because they haven't had that. They haven't had those conversations. You know, it's if you work for me, what's best for you, right? And if going and working for another company. So whilst you're here, how can I give you those skills so that you can go on and do that?
Yeah.
your next step. It might be that you don't leave, and in which case, fine, you changed your mind, you want to stay. But if that's the job that you want to do, then if that's the path that you set yourself, then I'd much rather work with people who've got a plan than have a team of people who turn up every day with no plan, and the only reason they're still here is because they don't have a plan.
Exactly.
I could probably do with upgrading the team at that point.
No, definitely. And I think you also find people almost kind of like hiding in corners and not really testing themselves or even performing in their current position, which I think is not an ideal situation. But like, the world's dramatically changed since the start of the year. I mean, you mentioned obviously it's a good time to take advantage of maybe some of the talent that's on the market, where maybe enterprise businesses aren't as heavily recruiting, or their graduate schemes aren't kind of taking place. I mean, London's like a ghost town at the moment. Do you have any advice for businesses almost trying to adapt and almost survive in this kind of new world? So it's quite a tough time out there. I mean, not everyone can kind of look at kind of bringing in new team members. Is there any advice that you would give for maybe business leaders in this position?
In talking to executive teams, I'm and having looked at some data that Microsoft published about their own organization.
Yeah.
Days have got longer. It looks as though Microsoft was saying the volume of Teams conversations between 6 and midnight has doubled, and on average their Teams days have got 20% longer. So people are working an extra day a week, right? They're working effectively a 6-day week, and people are working from 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. But their productivity hasn't gone up. People aren't delivering anymore. So, and at the beginning, people were quite upbeat about working from home, but I now get this sense that people are starting to feel just a little bit overwhelmed by this 12-hour day or 14-hour day, and certainly some people were looking forward to getting back into offices, and some clients had got sort of 30 or 40% of their teams. Others I was talking to last week were at 50%, and then of course the world, the lid's been shut back on the box again, and so I was sensing in the last few days from leadership teams just some exhaustion and almost depression.
Yeah.
People are spending a lot of time in email. People are spending a lot of time on Zoom or Teams or Meet, and it's just sort of oppressive. And so I think one of the things is focusing in on the one or two things that make a difference every day. And so, if you're in sales, it might be revenue, but then what's your leading indicator? Is that building the pipeline? Is that selling conversations? Are you having 5, 10, 15 selling conversations every day?
Yeah.
And focusing in on that, so that you can say no to stuff, say no to Zoom meetings, even some firms saying, look, our default meeting is now 25 minutes instead of an hour. Because if we do 25 minutes, that forces everybody to turn up and be sharper and, get to the point. And even not allowing people to multitask, right? It's dead easy on a Zoom call. Let's do some email while we're there. But if you're doing that, you're not present. And that whole everybody spending their time not really present, everybody spending their time 8 hours a day on Zoom or Teams and also doing their email at the same time. People are just exhausted and have no sense of job satisfaction at the end of the day. So change some of those simple things around meeting etiquette. If you're on Zoom or you're on Teams, and no email, no phone, no WhatsApp, just absolute focus. Let's get this meeting done. What's the purpose of the meeting?
Yeah.
Are all of the people on this call, do they all need to be here? And some of that sort of basic stuff, whereas at the beginning, I think it was everyone was happy to be on every call and everyone was happy to share because it was really novel being at home.
Yeah, the novel's worn off now, 100%.
Yes, and now it's like, how do we get the best from this tool and stop these tools just sap? Yeah, because the idea is, if you roll forward and say, what would the new normal look like? Well, maybe we're in the office 3 days a week, where we were at home 1 or 2 days. What would we do at home? Well, frankly, there's no point in being at home if all you're going to do is email. If the point about being at home, you look at Cal Newport's book, Deep Work. It's being at home is about doing things where you don't get interrupted. Being at home is about doing work that doesn't involve email and Zoom. Yeah. So, if it's about socializing, well, that's frankly much easier to do in the office. So, carving out some time in the day, each day, or on specific days of the week, whilst we're all still working at home, and doing deep work that involves individual concentration and blocking the rest of the world out, I think is very useful for people's sense of personal achievement and
motivation.
And getting those days down from 12 hours back to a more meaningful number.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I know kind of what you're saying kind of would kind of progress to this, but I mean, is there anything leaders should be thinking about to keep, if things get worse, etc.?
Well, look, it's more of that, isn't it? It's a marathon, not a sprint. And one of the things that we do when we're actually going back to the talent assessment thing, one of the things we do is we create a job scorecard for people so that everybody says, what are the one or the two things that we're going to measure you on every day? And I find most people actually don't know the answer to this. So, understanding what individuals should be delivering each day, what does a great day look like? And then have you got the tools in place so that the individuals can see the score at the end of the day? So at the end, at 5 o'clock, if I'm in your team, what do I have to have done for this to have been an A day?
Yeah.
Because then otherwise tomorrow when we're huddling in a daily huddle, I can't ask for your help to help me have a better day tomorrow than I had yesterday, because I don't know the score. Nobody goes and plays football and finds out the score. You know the score in the game, right? You know that you've got to push for an equalizer in the second half, right?
Yeah.
And so people have got to have the same sort of rules. What's my position? What game are we playing? What are the white lines? What's the contribution that the team are expecting from me? And I need to be able to know that score in real time. And if I've got that, then that actually helps me say, right, well, I can't do email all day. I can only do email 4 hours, or in the afternoon, or in chunks, because I've got stuff that I need to do. And the team know that I'm not available because I'm working on the thing that they're counting on me for.
Yeah.
And that clarity of output and measurement is often missing.
Yeah. I mean, what I mean, when obviously on the topic of motivation, I mean, what are your thoughts on mentorship? I mean, do you still have a mentor? I mean, what do you think? And also, what are the key attributes that you think make a good mentor?
Yes. One of the things that I do with a number of my global coaching colleagues, so we all have independent businesses, but we collaborate on sales and marketing, best practice, or delivery. So I spend quite a lot of time in the week. I probably spend 4 hours a week talking to colleagues around the world, helping them and them helping me. So I think it's absolutely vital, because you're trying to challenge yourself. It's very easy to get your own worldview. You look in the mirror and you think you're right, and so you want to talk to people who are different, who have a different perspective, even different personality. So you don't spend your time in the echo chamber. I think there's a difference between coaching and mentoring. So I think my view of it is your mentor has some expertise in the thing that you do, and so that there's knowledge that they can impart. And if I'm working with a CEO of a tech firm, then sometimes I'm, I guess, mentoring. Other times I'm coaching, where one of our clients she's the CEO of a multi-academy trust. And so I have no direct experience other than as a pupil in education. And so there I'm definitely coaching, where I'm mostly asking questions and trying to get in Hazel's case, getting her to reflect on her challenge and what she might do differently. But I think as I think about my own success, I probably always had, certainly from the first time I ended up with any sort of serious managerial position, or even I suppose back even at Marks and Spencer's, my first sort of graduate trainee job, there were coaches and mentors in place, formally and informally. And just that, if your manager's not telling you you're doing a good job, well, you're looking for that from somebody else.
100%.
And so and you're looking for some challenge as well, even if your manager thinks you're doing a good job, and you might be in that company, in that context, but where are you going? What does the future look like? What other things do you need to work on or develop to be more successful?
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of what you coach is around the Rockefeller habits, right? I mean, could you tell us what they are, I suppose, and why business leaders should be thinking about them when scaling their company?
Well, the first one is it's really about the executive team, and so there are 10. And Vern Harnish looked at Rockefeller's success and said, look, what was it that he did, and how could you codify that so that if you were to copy that, you might get success in your own business? And look, I'll just talk about the first one. The first one is that your leadership team consists of A, players, and that your leadership team trusts each other. So often that's where we bring in something like Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a team. Do we really have trust? Do we really have enough constructive conflict? Often that's a challenge to British teams who are perhaps a little bit too polite with each other. And then does the team have real clarity on what they're each accountable for? Do we? Because the thing is with the leadership team is I don't believe your business can outperform your leadership team, which is the reason that I coach teams. Because if that leadership team can become a high performing team, it casts a long shadow, and the behaviors that we get at the leadership team will automatically cascade through the organization. So, if I'm talking to somebody and they say, Dom, we just don't have a culture of accountability in our business. What they're saying, they don't realize this, but what they're saying is we don't have a culture of accountability at the executive team level.
Yeah.
Because if you did, that culture would automatically flow down through the organization. So the first one is, the first Rockefeller habit really is have you got the right leadership team in place? Yeah. And if you have, the rest of those things are possible. But if you haven't, then that's where you start. So talent assessment at the top, behaviors at the top, and then you can build a team that can take the company to where you want it to get to.
Nice. Okay. I suppose last kind of like question for you, Dominic. I mean, is there an area? I mean, what's the biggest area related to your role at the moment that you're most curious about, and why? I suppose.
Well, I could answer that a couple of ways, but one of the things that I've found both interesting and challenging is having the model that we've built is that we work face to face with clients, and we've built the management lab down on the farm in Wiltshire, and clients come to us. Yeah. So that's the business model that we've built. And then of course COVID comes along, and you can't meet any of your clients, so you have to switch to virtual. And then there's an upside to that, which is we've done work with clients in Australia, Vietnam, and the United States since the pandemic began, which we wouldn't have done otherwise. And so you end up with an international flavor, which is interesting. But then the challenge is how do you make the virtual sessions as impactful as the face-to-face sessions?
Yeah.
And that challenge remains. And so I'm curious about how we do that and how we make that better. So that's been occupying a certain amount of the mentoring or coaching conversations I've had with other people, or even the competitive shopping. If somebody sends me an invite to a sort of interactive webinar session, over the last 6 months, I've done quite a lot of gone on other people's stuff to see how they're doing it, so we can pull that across. We're using a tool called Mural, which allows us to be interactive. And in fact, now when we did some face-to-face work with a client last week, and we actually got everyone on their laptops using a Mural even though we were in the same room.
Really?
Because that can sometimes drive consensus and speed. Yeah. And so there was an exercise we were doing that was just taking too long. So I said, look, get your laptops out. Let's do it like this. That was just quicker than writing out physical Post-it notes. Yeah. So that's been, I still think we're about 30 or 40% more productive when we do it face-to-face than Zoom, thinking about client work or kickoff work that we've done over the last sort of 6 months. And so it's how do we get the virtual to be as helpful and as impactful for clients as we know the face-to-face is. And that's where I remain I'm curious and trying to learn and develop.
Yeah. Nice. Well, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. And we wish you the very best with the book and the future. But yeah, thank you for joining us.
Jack, it's been absolutely magic. Thank you very much indeed for having me on.
And we'll see you all next time. Okay, all the best. Bye.